Good afternoon and welcome to the Brazos River Authority's Brown Bag on the Brazos. I'm Judy Pierce, Public Information Officer for the Brazos River Authority and your host for today's virtual town hall meeting. Today we have a couple of interesting topics to discuss. We're taking a look at cybersecurity and the increasing need to keep your drinking water safe. In fact, according to the Environmental Protection Agency, attacks on water industry have become increasing. As a result, this past spring, the organization issued new rules and guidance for water providers who are responsible for implementing a Safe Water Drinking Act. We'll speak with Luke Collins, our Chief Technology Officer, about that, and then we'll take a look at the ongoing drought and whether or not we'll be seeing some changes with BRA lead hydrologist Chris Higgins. And then, as always, we'll answer your questions at the end of our presentation. So before we jump in, let's talk just a little about housekeeping. Part of the purpose of being here today is to allow you to ask questions of the BRA. So at any time during our presentation today, you can ask a question by typing it into the chat function. You'll find that icon in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. If you don't get to your question today, please send us an email at information@brazos.org and we'll respond to you in writing. Or if you have a topic that you'd like to hear about, send it to us at the same address, information@brazos.org, and we'll look at the topic for a future brown bag meeting. So let's talk for just a second about our Board of Directors meetings. If you're not aware, the BRA Board of Directors meets every other month. Our last meeting was held on September 28th here at the central office. Our meetings are live streamed on our BRA YouTube channel. If you're not able to tune in for that meeting, you can watch it by visiting YouTube or by going onto our website at brazos.org and choosing board minutes, where you can view the meeting by agenda topic. You can also see on the slide that the next board meeting is scheduled for November 13th. So if you're interested, please plan on joining us then. So that leads us to our first guest of the day. We're very pleased to welcome the BRA's Chief Technology Officer, Luke Collins, who joins us today to talk about cybersecurity. And Luke, most people think that they understand about cybersecurity and why it's important, but why has cybersecurity become so important for the water industry?
Yeah, that's a really good question. In fact, it's a big question that's on a lot of people's minds these days over the last few years, particularly with all the news articles about large-scale hacks that we've seen in the news that have actually affected members of the public. Good example of that with the Colonial Pipeline that brought oil prices up, and it was a really, really big panic there when that attack happened. And so that's a good example of what we're kind of seeing across the industry. And so what I'm going to kind of do is just kind of talk about the cybersecurity in general, what cybersecurity means to the BRA, some of the risks that are associated with our organization, what we're doing to look at those risks, to evaluate those risks, and to prevent them from happening at the organization. And so cybersecurity, just going to give you kind of a brief overview of what cybersecurity is, and that means a lot of different things, but the basics of cybersecurity is the practice of deploying people, policies, processes, and technologies to protect organizations, their critical systems, and sensitive information from digital attacks. So in a nutshell, everything that we have that's on a network, that's digital, cybersecurity is the practice of protecting that from the outside. So I believe we have another question about.
Well, how do the attacks occur? I mean, how do they get into a system?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of ways that people can get into our systems, and that we see successful attacks being occurred. And the most devastating attack that happens is ransomware. But before I kind of get into talking about ransomware and the devastation that it causes, I want to talk about the number one cause of a successful attack is social engineering. And what social engineering is the practice of pretending to be somebody who they are not to get information from somebody, whether it's your password, your email, information about the company, anything like that that can be used to exploit your system to get in and have what we call unauthorized access. Social engineering can be anything like phishing emails. It can be things where people pick up a phone and they call you and they pretend to be something else. Social engineering is just a brand new word that we use in cybersecurity for being a con artist. That is kind of who figured out social engineering from the beginning. And they kind of took that concept and they applied it to, and they modernized it and adapted to our changing technological world. They saw an opening and an exploitation to be taken and make money off of. And so that's essentially 90% of all cybersecurity attacks come from phishing and social engineering. That's the most successful way we're seeing people get into systems. And usually what happens is a company that you normally do business with that seems like it's a normal email that comes in, they are first the target. They might be more of a low-hanging fruit than our organization. So say somebody we do business with had their email compromised, and then they use that email to then look at our correspondence between that organization and our organization, and they go in and they find a way to insert themselves into a legitimate conversation and attach either a malicious URL, like a website link, or malicious attachment, like a fake PDF or something like that, that then downloads a virus and then gets into your system. So that's the first step of what happens in an attack. And the most devastating effects of what happens next, that would be what's called ransomware. And ransomware is pretty self-explanatory. What ransomware does is it takes your files, your data, your information, and it holds it hostage. And then it charges you a ransom to let that be released. What we're seeing is kind of unprecedented over the last decade as far as the success rates and the amount of business dollars that are being affected in these ransomware attacks that are becoming successful. In fact, in 2021, 11% of businesses that had a ransomware paid $1 million and more. That is a number that has significantly grown. We all heard of inflation. Well, inflation is affecting ransomware costs as well. So these numbers are only going up, only trending up. And in fact, the average cost of ransomware in 2022 was between $570,000 and $812,000. Depending on where you look, what sources you use, that number's going up. But I will say that ransoms now always pretty much start in the millions. So what happens is your files are encrypted. They send you an email or a link to a website that has instructions on contacting the hackers or the threat actors, as we call it in the cybersecurity world. And then they begin a negotiation. I personally, not here at the Brazos River Authority, but in my previous work history, and I come from the private industry, I've negotiated several ransoms. The first one I ever negotiated started at $500, and that was back in 2009 when this was first starting to emerge as a threat. And up to the last one that I started negotiations on, and that one did start over $1 million. So I've personally seen this happen. And it's only going to continue to grow, to affect us. And even after you pay the ransom, only 65% of data is restored. That's on average in 2021. We saw similar figures in 2022, and we expect even less than that in 2023. Is they are holding you hostage and then not always giving you your money back. There are other costs to consider when it comes to ransomware and cybersecurity attacks, and that's the cost of downtime. And downtime costs alone in 2021 cost the industry in the U.S. across all industries $160 billion.
Wow. So
I'm going to talk about what the top motivations for some of our cybersecurity or some cyber threat actors out there are. Number one is financial gain. At the end of the day, people are trying to gain money. There's different reasons for that. Second is corporate espionage, trying to steal company secrets, you have a certain algorithm that you're trying to hide or a recipe. Corporate espionage is high on the list, but that also leads to financial gain too. Essentially that's what it kind of boils down to. The next is the insider threat. This is a growing threat that we're seeing out in the cybersecurity landscape. That's essentially somebody that works for your organization. Maybe it's a disgruntled employee. Maybe it's somebody who doesn't feel like they're being paid enough or want to make an extra dollar. They sell information, or they install the virus or give somebody else access to the system for money or for other reasons. We are seeing that one grow, and so that's something that you always have to be looking at, because it's kind of like the movie Scream. The very beginning, I'm calling from inside your house. It's very, very scary, right? And so that's something that you least expect from people that you feel like are a part of your team. The next is hacktivism. These are politically motivated. Mostly we see those internationally happen for whatever reason it could be. We've seen them happen for many various reasons, and I'm not going to really get into those specifics. The final one on this list is nation-state hacks. This is basically cyber warfare, things of that nature. North Korea is very, very high on this list. And a lot of their attacks, the nation-state attacks, are for money. In fact, they pulled off one of the biggest bank heists in history, of 500 million or more, in one single hack. Cybercrime per capita, UK is #1, USA, Canada, Australia, and Greece is high up on that list. So that's who we're seeing get hit the most per capita, maybe not cumulatively, but per capita, this is where we're seeing the most attacks happen. Some notable U.S. incidents, the Colonial Pipeline, which I talked about before, the Oldsmar water utility. I put this one on here specifically because it affected the water sector. That one was in Florida in 2019, where somebody gained unauthorized access to some of the SCADA system there. Also, 2019, there was 22 Texas municipalities got ransomware. And then there was this San Francisco water poisoning incident. Nobody was actually poisoned, but they attempted to gain access, and that was about 5 years ago.
Okay. So as far as the water industry goes, you mentioned a couple there, but are we looking at a threat to the shutdown of our system operations, or are we looking at contamination or poisoning, like you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And so I'll kind of talk more about the specifics of the risks to the water sector. We have talked about the EPA, who has been raising the alarm bells about this affecting the water sector. Traditionally, the water sector was not really a target for cyber criminals. We kind of flew under the radar for a very long time. About 5 or 6 years ago, this started to change when people out there started to realize that they could really take a hold of critical infrastructure. This kind of started with the energy sector first, right, and hospital systems. They're like, where you are most vulnerable, when human life is at risk, people's electricity is at risk, when critical utilities are at risk, you're more likely to pay to get those things up, because our business relies heavily on availability. In any second of downtime or where we can't provide that service to our constituents, to the members of the public, potential human life could be at risk for that. So that's why we're really looking at cybersecurity more and more in the water sector, and that's why we're becoming more of an attack. The AWWA actually lists cyber attacks as the #1 risk facing the water sector. I'm going to talk briefly about this. I'm not going to get too into this, but one of the largest risks that we're seeing that kind of piggybacks onto what I'm going to show next in the next slide is cyber mafia, or the cyber gangs out there. In the past, were pretty rudimentary, just somebody in their mom's basement or somebody in a different country that's maybe a few friends are sitting in a room, dark room, and trying to get into people's systems. Now we're seeing more of a shift to actual, almost what you could call corporations. They have entire industries where they have office space, they have cubicles, where they are taking cyber attacks to the next level. And you can go onto what we call the dark web, which is a hidden internet that you can access through different means of just going to Google Chrome or accessing the internet through a normal browser. There's special dark webs that you can go to in marketplaces where you can hire people and hire these sophisticated companies to carry out these attacks on your behalf. And they have the resources to do it. They have the knowledge to do it. They have the experience. Everything down from the attacks to the attack vectors to the ransomware software to negotiation services. They will negotiate on your behalf. You can outsource essentially an entire cybersecurity attack from the beginning all the way until the end. There's even a help desk where you can open up tickets if you have a problem or a question, and they'll answer you, and they have customer service representatives. It's gone corporate.
A large industry on its own.
It's become a very large and multi-billion-dollar industry that's growing. And so why take time to describe what we're dealing with is anybody can now go on the dark web and hire somebody to start doing these things. And that creates a much larger challenge for us as cybersecurity professionals to really stop and prevent these things. Because instead of just dealing with somebody who really made, pretty rudimentary attack, we're now dealing with more sophisticated attacks that are targeted against us because of these methods. So some of the most specific risks that we see in the water sector, the Brazos River Authority specifically, are going to be two things, and that's financial and operational risks. I'm going to talk about operational risks first because the operational risk is while it's not the highest risk, it has the highest emphasis on effects from a certain attack. So what we consider to be our largest risk is an operational risk because of the devastating effects of what could happen if our operations are affected. Now, we have done, and I'm going to talk a little bit about prevention of those operational risks here in a second, okay. But what can potentially happen is, what has happened at other facilities and other targets, like I talked about the Oldsmar water facility in Florida. Their system was actually a clean water facility that was compromised, and they began to start altering the chlorine levels in the water, which chlorine is a part of the purifying process that helps provide clean water. And so they were in the system trying to alter that to affect the water output. The good news, the BRA, is we have a lot of alarms. We have a lot of preventative measures in place that prevent those types of things from happening. So that's a very, very unlikely scenario. But however unlikely these types of things are, we have to think about them. We have to think like an attacker. We have to use the evidence of what's happening around us and think about what is the worst case scenario and what do we have to do to prevent these things. Because not only do we have to think about, chlorine levels and water, but we also have reservoirs that have dams where we release water. And we have to think about all of those operational risks that can come to take our systems down that can affect our communication, that can affect how those dams and facilities operate. Those are things that are run by technology, and they've been run by technology for traditionally a long time. At the BRA, we work very, very hard to be able to take those technological systems offline at the drop of a hat, and all of our systems can be run manually after that. So that's the good news about our systems. We do have that ability to do that, and we have policies and procedures for events of such a nature. And so that's kind of what the biggest risk is: downtime, potentially somebody getting in there and affecting something purposely. But probably the biggest risk is somebody sends a ransomware virus and they try to take our systems offline. And our system being offline can affect our ability to do provide services like clean water, wastewater, and monitoring water levels and such. But we have a great team that kind of can prevent those things from happening, and also can operate those without technology. Financial risks is very high from result of all those things that I just mentioned, right? So ransomware, obviously just paying the ransom is going to be a cost. The other part of that is in every second that we have our systems are down, we have to deploy extra resources. In the event that our systems do get taken offline, we can't operate a facility. That costs money. That costs the city money. That costs us money. That costs everybody money that's involved in the constituent that can't get the product that they are, which is ultimately water. We are a water provider, and that's what we do. And so those risks all affect us. And the third risk is reputational risks. So we all know that faith in institutions is important, because you want to trust that when I go to the store and I buy the milk's not going to poison me, right?
Right.
Like, we want to have trust in the institution that we are doing our job. And so when you have a cyber attack, and I'm going to use the Dallas ISD as an example. Dallas ISD's had 3 ransomware attacks in the last 5 or 6 years, and their reputation to prevent those it's taken some hits. It's damaged, and that would be the same for us, the Brazos River Authority. We're required to notify the public of any type of cybersecurity attack in the event data has been compromised, and so when we relay that information to the public, that degrades our reputation and our trust. And we value that very much, the BRA, because we have a great institution here, a great group of people that protect our water. And we want to show that to everybody that we're continuing to do that.
I just say, it sounds like there's an awful lot of risk out there. So what precautions are we taking?
Yes, and I want to talk about 2 more risks before we get into that. And 2 of those risks are, the thing that I alluded to before, which is human life risk, and that's the result of the operations and employment risks. Employment risks, a little bit, that's kind of like if there's contracts over it, we'd have to let people go. Or if a system goes down long enough, we might affect, somebody's job in the event that something happened, and that's a very common risk in the industry, maybe not necessarily the Brazos River Authority. And human life is always the number one thing that we think about when we sleep. And protecting our constituents, protecting everybody at the Brazos Basin is the most important thing that we think about. And that's why I wake up every day and I come to work. When I first started this position, the CEO of this company asked me what kept me up at night. And the first thing I thought about is, a dam gate being breached, or something happening to the water quality. So those are the things that keep me up at night. But here at the Brazos River Authority, we have a lot of measures that I'm going to talk about with prevention. And so I do sleep well. So while this is a concern of ours, we have done an excellent job of protecting our systems from every single facet. I'm going to talk about those here a little bit more. So how do we respond? How do we prevent these things? The first proactive response is education and training. So one of the biggest, like I alluded to at the very beginning, the number one reason people get compromised is because of social engineering. And the best way to prevent against social engineering, against phishing, against people trying to exploit the human element is to educate everybody at the Brazos River Authority what the threats are, what to look for, and how to detect suspicious activity. We have regular training here. We have in development, we have special education programs for our operators at our clean water and wastewater facilities that cater specifically to what to look for in the event of a water sector specific cybersecurity attack, what to look for in a specific operational technology attack. Those are things that we want to educate our members so that we can be very vigilant in stopping these things, because it starts with us. Everyone in this room, everyone at this organization is the gatekeeper from cyber criminals, right? I mean, we hold the keys to letting people in. And so we have to be educated and trained on how to detect abnormal activity. And if we do suspect something is going on, who do we contact? And a big part of the organization, the training, education, comes with executive buy-in. And what I mean by executive buy-in is I worked in the private industry for many, many years. Trying to get a CEO or a CFO or somebody in a management level or a board member to buy in, to dedicate resources, to hire personnel, to give dollars, valuable dollars to a threat that they don't see. This is something that happens in the background. It's something that doesn't happen very often. And that's kind of the reason why we see these cyber attacks being so successful. That is not the case here. We have incredible executive buy-in from the top down. Our board members, our CEO, our executive management team, all have a sense of urgency when it comes to protecting our systems, because at the end of the day, we know how much of a risk this is, and it's only growing. So we have dedicated financial resources, human resources, all of these things into systems and the technical knowledge and experience into hitting this head on, because we know we have to get ahead of the game. The second we fall back, the second that we are considered low-hanging fruit, or we're doing less than other people out there, that's when they're going to put their sights onto us. And so part of how we accomplish that is we need to write these things down, and we need to have exercises where we go sit around the table and we say, what do we do in this situation? So we have policies and procedures that list all these things down, what to do, how should I be using my computer at work? How should I be accessing data? How should I be sharing stuff with the outside world? What do I do if there is a cybersecurity attack? We call that an incident response policy. All these policies and procedures we have from an organizational level, and there's a lot of procedures that we have what we go through in the event of attack, an event of how to protect our data, and all that stuff's written down. The second to last thing is cyber vigilance, and that's kind of what I alluded to, that all these three things I talked to kind of lead to that end goal, which is to always be on guard. You know, we don't want people to walk around paranoid that something's going to happen, and that's not what we're looking for. We instill the education and the confidence. When you are adequately prepared, when you have the faith in the institution you work for, you can have the confidence to be vigilant, not to be overconfident, but to have the skills and the knowledge to be looking out there for suspicious activity. You specifically have sent me many times. You've sent me emails, and sometimes we get flooded with people like, "Hey, is this a real email? Is this something that I should be worried about?"
They look very real.
Yeah, and they look so real. That's the thing that we're constantly running up against. Is these things are so good. They're so good at manipulating the human mind into tricking them into thinking something's real. So we really have to do training. And the final and one of the most important things that we institute here at Brazos River Authority is cybersecurity investment. We've invested a significant amount of our dollars to our skills and to our humans, resources, and to our systems. And we have very, very sophisticated cybersecurity technological tools that we have installed. I'm not going to talk about them specifically because I don't want to give anything up. But we have almost at least 10 different cybersecurity tools that are installed throughout our networks and throughout our systems. And we even have operational technology specific cybersecurity tools that we've implemented that can look for specific things attacking a dam or a water facility. We have implemented AI. We've implemented machine learning systems that automatically detect, they automatically prevent, and they automatically alert for any kind of suspicious activity. And a lot of times it prevents us from doing normal day-to-day business. Something that's normal gets flagged and blocked. And that can be anything from just trying to run an application that's part of day-to-day business, but we play it safe. And so we have the systems and the tools and the people that know how to run those tools and respond. So that's kind of how the vision and the strategy that we take from the Brazos River Authority and what we're kind of seeing in the water sector, because we're a growing institution and water is life. And so we have to protect our resources. And so that's what we've done at the Brazos River Authority.
Right. Well, it sounds like there are an awful lot of risks out there, but we're prepared and we're making sure that those that have contracts for water are able to receive that water and our dams are maintained safely. And
Yes.
People's water will be coming out of people's faucets.
Yes. And something I did want to touch on is a lot of what I come across on cybersecurity and technology is we interface with the people that operate our plants and operate our dams. And I am blown away at the expertise and the vigilance and the dedication that we have here at the Brazos River Authority. I mean, I've never met such amazing people that are dedicated to providing the best possible product. I mean, there's been times where people will tell me that they stay up all night because it's raining just to watch the water levels, even though we have a system that'll automatically alert them. So when I worked in the private industry, and that was not necessarily my experience. But here at the Brazos River Authority, it's really kind of blown me away. So
that's wonderful. Well, Luke, thank you for taking the time to talk with us about this. It's very important, and we want everyone to know that their water is going to be safe in the future. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the time. All right. So moving on to our next topic here. Just a real quick reminder, if you do have questions anytime during these presentations, you can go ahead and go into that note in the upper right-hand corner and let us know if you have a question. We'll be happy to try to answer that toward the end of our presentation today. So our next guest is Chris Higgins. He is the lead hydrologist for the BRA. Welcome, Chris. This is your first time for coming to talk with us at the Brown Bag.
Yes, thank you.
So the last time we were here for the Brown Bag, we were experiencing very record-breaking heat, and it had gone on for months. We had very, very little rain. But even last night, we started to have a little bit of rainfall. So what have we seen since August, September? What's going on with our water?
Sure. Yeah, and it's kind of funny because I've experienced this multiple times in the past. It seems like when you actually start presenting on drought, it's been raining. So, and that's of course what we ran into. Now we had a storm push through, and I think it was just coming out of the Gulf when we came in here. So I just wanted to start with this graphic. It's the 60-day departure from normal precipitation. So when you talk about where we've been since the last Brown Bag 2 months ago, that's what this is, and it was kind of in your question to me, with the lack of rainfall and the record-breaking heat, where are we at with the drought? So you can see a good part of the basin here has 2 to 4 inch rainfall deficit since the last Brown Bag in August and September. Looking at it another way, what this graphic shows you is the departure from normal, what you would expect to see in a normal August and September. And so, other than a few pockets there in the central basin, which look like pretty normal, you look down in Brazoria and Fort Bend counties, you can see deficits as much as 6 inches. And so you combine that with, and I'm going to go ahead and move to the next slide. You combine that with that record-breaking heat, and that's where kind of I'm going to take you here. You can visually see how the drought's propagated throughout the basin over the last 2 months. That graphic there on your left that you're seeing on your screen, that was produced on August the 3rd. And this comes from NOAA and a couple other federal climate agencies and academia that work as a team to put these out, and they issue them every Thursday. So there's actually the slide on your right, there's actually a new one that's going to be issued today. And we also put these, we take that product and our GIS guy kind of overlays the basin and puts those reservoirs on here. And it's actually on our website. So I'm going to kind of run through this pretty quick, but you can always visit our website to see this. So you look back 2 months ago, about 8% of our basin was in extreme drought, and that's the Little River system. And we'll talk a little bit more about the Little River system in a bit.
That's the red colors.
Yeah, the darkish red color. Yeah. And overall, about 3/4 of the basin was in, some level of drought intensity according to this U.S. Drought Monitor.
Right.
You fast forward over to where we're at today, over 40%, 100% of the basin is actually classified in some sort of drought intensity, and over 40% and is in the extreme condition. You can see that key on the bottom left that kind of correlates to the colors, is in an extreme or exceptional drought condition. You can see the Little River and the lower basin has been much more impacted than the rest of the basin. So, that's pretty much, answers your question on where we're at with the drought. Bottom line, it's gotten worse.
Well, during August, the BRA sent out notices to contract holders that we hit triggers that put us in stage 2 drought restrictions. Can you tell us what happens when those notices are sent out? What are contract holders expected to do when we send those notices out?
So, anytime we hit trigger a drought level in our drought contingency plan, we send out letters letting our constituents that rely on that particular source for their water supply what actions they should take. Stage 1 is a 5% voluntary reduction. At stage 2, it's a 10%, and stage 3, it's a 20% reduction from what they would have done had those drought declarations not been put into place. And so for our Little River system back in August, we sent out, we initiated straight stage 2, and of course we did like we always do. We sent out letters to our customers that rely on Stillhouse and Belton and Georgetown as their main source, and asked them to do a 10% reduction. So a lot of times, we were already in stage 1 for that system, of course. And so many of our customers were already taking action. So if we asked for a 10% reduction and they were already, taking some sort of action, trying to reduce their water use by the 5% voluntary, well, then we just asked them to try to take action and do another 5% to get a total of 10%. And we don't tell our customers or ask our customers any specifics because each of our customers is so unique. I mean, we have some of our customers are 40-acre pecan farms, and some of them are huge industrial complexes or very large municipalities. And so they know their systems. And most of our customers are required to maintain their own drought contingency plan. So we just expect them to take action within their drought contingency plan to meet that 10% reduction. And, in addition to that, some of them have alternate supplies. Some of them don't rely completely on, the BRA water supply system, for their resources. They may have their own run-of-the-river water rights or their own reservoirs, or they may have groundwater wells, or they may, import water in from another basin. So, they can always, convert to other secondary supplies to meet those demands, or they can implement strategies, and those strategies are specific to each individual system, and they know how to most effectively make those reductions in their system. So
I understand that Lakes Belton and Stillhouse Hollow had actually reached historic lows. And is that because of use, or what is the reason for that? Is it also just the lack of rainfall?
Well, it's a combination. Let me go to this next slide here, and I'm going to kind of zoom out, and then we'll zoom back in to kind of answer your question. This graphic, many of you have probably seen because we show it quite a bit. We're pretty proud of it. And it's on our website as well. This is, we kind of, our term, we call it the stovepipe graphic, but currently, where those blue bars show how much we have in capacity. And so the inverse of that, the white shows the vacant capacity in each of our reservoirs. And so if you look at that, that key at the top right, you can just kind of see the specific numbers. And the upper basin, Possum Kingdom and Granbury, are kind of in the best shape of the basin. But then you move down to the Little River that we're talking about here. Belton, Stillhouse, Georgetown, Proctor, Proctor's 26% full, Belton 56, Stillhouse 59% full, Georgetown 46% full. And so that's kind of, where we're sitting. And your question is, why are we so low in the Little River?
Right.
In Belton and Stillhouse in particular. And so I'm going to move to this next slide. And then if I can, did it go somewhere?
There we go.
A little bit of technical difficulties. Let me get back to it. It's not really working that well here. Okay, oops. I think we're there.
Okay.
Okay. So, just kind of answering that question on a higher level, inflows into reservoirs, just all across the board, are the biggest driver in reservoir elevations.
And that's caused by rainfall.
Yeah,
Right.
rainfall runoff and, into our streams and into the reservoir. And so, or the lack thereof. And so what we've been experiencing is the lack of. You're always going to have evaporation. So if you just have a reservoir sitting there and there's no inflows, the reservoir is going to drop. Now, when you look at Belton and Stillhouse in particular, we have a fairly high lakeside, local demand. And not so much at Stillhouse, but for Belton, we also have a fair amount of water supply releases coming out of the reservoir. So it's mainly the combination of, lakeside use, downstream water supply releases, and evaporation is going to be your main reasons why you're going to, and then if you don't have enough inflow to recover from that, your reservoir is going to be, it's like any system, you take more out of it than you put in, it's going to be lower.
Right.
And so, in this graphic that you're looking at here, you can see Belton's on top, Stillhouse is at the bottom. And I kind of drew this black line at the bottom to show that, this is the lowest that we've ever seen at Belton and the same at Stillhouse. And there's a little caveat to that at Belton. Back in August of 1971, we raised the elevation 25 feet. And so the current is, 694 is the top of conservation in Belton. So the little caveat to that is it's the lowest it's been since they raised the level in 1971. And if you really want to dig into the specifics, I looked at the numbers before this. The reservoir was last full, and you can see right here, and both of them were about the same, kind of in the August, September timeframe of 2021 is when they were last full. And if you start there and just look at the numbers at Belton, just focusing on Belton, we've had about 120,000 acre feet of inflow. But when you look at how much water we've released for downstream water supply releases and lakeside demands, that was 170,000 acre feet. So there's 50,000 acre feet more that left the lake than came in. But then when you add on top of evaporation since August, September 21, that was another about 140,000 acre feet. So the total difference is about 190,000 acre feet. And that's where you'll see that we are right now. There's about 190,000 acre feet of vacant storage below Belton. So that's kind of digging in the real specifics to answer your question.
So that the amount of heat that we had, the high temperatures in August, September really made evaporation rates go up. To use.
Yeah, when you're looking at evaporation, temperature is kind of the biggest driver. Wind is another big component of it, but temperature by far is the biggest driver of evaporation. So yes, most definitely that intense heat that we all remember that will forever be imprinted in our minds. Nobody wanted to go outside.
Yes.
Was a big, component of that. So we were probably losing over a foot when we were right in the middle of the dog days of summer. A foot to a foot and 2 inches of elevation in all of our reservoirs every month, just due to evaporation.
Mm-hmm.
So
the the National Weather Service has said that the weather condition El Nino is becoming prevalent. And do you see that helping us at all as far as water levels go in the fall and winter months?
Yeah. So just one real quick caveat to that. I'm a hydrologist, so that's a little bit out of my expertise, but
Sure.
we leverage and rely on, products put out by the Climate Prediction Center, the National Weather Service, and other federal agencies to kind of talk from. And so I pulled this graphic off of a product that the Climate Prediction Center puts out. I think it's monthly. And this is a little complicated, but and I won't talk too much on it, but backing up a little bit, El Nino, which started probably it's really started strengthening around mid to late spring. It's conducive of it's indicative in Texas to produce higher rainfall totals. And so it's not a guarantee, it's just a better than average chance that we'll have above normal rainfall. And so you're wondering if that happened in spring, why do we have such a dry summer?
Right.
Well, the experts, the climate experts say that El Nino and La Nina conditions really aren't a big driver in Texas summers. There's other climatological phenomenon that kind of drive Texas summers. And it really starts kicking in the fall. We're kind of where we're at now. And so these red bars show the probability of us being in El Nino. And so the ones that go all the way to the top there, it's 100% probable that we're going to be in a El Nino condition September, October, November, December. These are 3 months rolling averages all the way through the winter 2024. And so just based on historical averages, we are hopefully this comes to fruition and we do kind of start seeing a pattern shift into, wetter conditions, from this dry cycle that we've been in for so long now. So
El Nino doesn't really help Texas in the summer, but it may begin to show something as far as more rainfall in the fall and winter.
Yeah, the effects of El Nino typically begin to manifest themselves in the fall and through the winter. So, that's kind of what we're banking on right now. I mean, we can't rely on hope. We still have to plan for the worst, but this does give us some hope that things will kind of shift to the wetter side as we move along. So
as lake levels would start coming up, then we could look at getting out of our drought stages, stage 2 or into stage 1, moving back into stage 1 if that's a possibility.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, that's, because our drought triggers are tied into capacity and lake levels. And if we start seeing some recovery and they come out of those triggers, most definitely that would mean that we could start rescinding some of those drought declarations across the basin if that were to occur. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Chris. We appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
This is basically just and I'm not going to really talk these slides. These products are available online, but this just kind of backs up what I just said. This is the October monthly outlook. It shows that it's leaning above average for Texas. This is the 3-month all the way through the end of the year. This also is just saying the same thing. And then the U.S. seasonal drought outlook, it just says drought remains intact, but it's likely to improve. And so that's what we're hoping. I'm actually hoping for it to completely recover.
Sure.
So, but yeah, that's kind of all I had.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Don't leave yet, though, because I know we've had a question that came in earlier in the week that you might be able to answer.
Okay.
So the first question we had comes from our email information at brazos.org. And it's basically asking that this rain that we're starting to have or that's coming in this week or that's expected this week, can you give us an idea of what this rain event might do? Is it going to do anything to help us at all, or are we or is it just a drop in the bucket?
Well, this is another, so what I saw this morning when I came in and looked at rainfall totals, we saw 1 to 2 inches across the basin with pockets of 3 inches in
That
different
was
parts.
last night.
Yeah, that
Okay.
last night. And we kind of saw some intermittent rainfall activity since mid-September. Each time we get one of those rains, we're going to see some improvement. It's going to help, put moisture back into the soil. But it's been so dry for so long that the soil is just like a sponge right now. As we move into the fall and our vegetation starts going dormant, it's going to help with that, especially as we move into the winter. And these rains like we've been getting, it's just going to help, fill in those holes, fill in those stock tanks, and get the soil moisture back to where eventually when we start getting these storms, we're going to start seeing runoff. So it's either, we got to keep seeing these back to back to back, storm systems, or, some sort of more significant event, some sort of flood, 6, 7, 8 inch, flood type events, to where we can start really seeing some improvements to our drought conditions. So.
Okay, so basically we need more rain more often in order for that process to begin.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Okay, well, thank you. We had one other question that doesn't involve rainfall, thank goodness. And this is kind of unusual. We've been having a lot of calls and a lot of people emailing us asking about hunting on the Brazos, which is, it's interesting that the Brazos River Authority only has approved hunting on our 3 reservoirs, Possum Kingdom Lake, Lake Granbury, and Lake Limestone, and that's just for duck hunting season, waterfowl hunting season. So we don't allow hunting of any other type on our reservoirs. And we are actually not in charge of hunting restrictions or laws on the river. That actually falls under Texas Parks and Wildlife. And I understand that during this last legislative session, there were some changes made to the laws that do restrict hunting on the river. So I'm afraid we can't really answer your questions about hunting on the river. We'd love for you to talk to Texas Parks and Wildlife and find out what those hunting restrictions are, because they are very different from what they were prior to this legislative session. So I see now that we don't have any additional questions. So I would like to thank everyone for coming today and for being here with us. And if you do have questions, please email us at information@brazos.org. Or if you have topics you'd like to hear more about, please let us know also at that same email address. We'd be happy to look forward to new topics in the coming year. So again, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you the next time we have a brown bag.